Ever wondered how you really truly measure victory in a conflict? Especially when, the air is just thick with conflicting
It
reports.
gets confusing fast.
Exactly. So today we're diving deep into a question that's really relevant right now and actually pretty crucial for those of you prepping for your UPSC exams.
Okay.
And the question is, does losing fighter aircraft, does that automatically mean defeat?
Ah, the big one.
Yeah, and we're looking at this through the lens of Operation Sindoor. Remember those claims from Pakistan and some Western media too?
Oh, I do. Asserting a clear victory, wasn't it? Based on supposedly destroying Indian bases and 6 fighter jets.
That was the narrative.
Yeah, and it seemed to get picked up quite a bit, especially by, certain journalists and publications, some American, some British.
Right.
They even went so far, some reports claiming 4 IAF aircraft down, including Rafales, which, if true, would be significant. They were calling it a stunning victory for Pakistan's Air Force.
A stunning victory.
And there was definitely a feeling, or at least a suggestion, that this narrative fit quite neatly with a sort of Chinese-Pakistani line about, technological superiority.
Okay, right. Let's unpack that a bit because here's where it gets, well, really interesting, particularly thinking about strategy vital for your UPSC prep.
Hmm.
Even if, let's just say, for argument's sake, we entertain these claims about aircraft losses. And look, our sources suggest we should be very cautious, hinting at maybe orchestrated propaganda.
Strong possibility.
But even so, does losing some aircraft automatically mean India failed in its main objective?
Yeah.
Was the goal just about air combat, or was it broader, sending a message to terrorists based in Pakistan?
That is the absolute crucial pivot point here.
Yeah.
Because focusing only on plane numbers, it conveniently sidesteps a really critical question.
Which is?
Whose Director General of Military Operations, whose DGMO, actually picked up the phone first? Who initiated contact to stop the fighting in the air?
Oh,
Now, for our listeners, the DGMOs are usually the ones who talk to de-escalate, right? So the answer to who called first, well, it speaks volumes.
it really does, doesn't it? The fact, as reported, that Pakistan initiated that call, it strongly suggests something about their position on the ground, or rather, in the air.
Indeed.
And it makes you think, how credible are these triumphant victory claims if the supposed winner is the one hitting the brakes?
It strains credibility. It's almost like imagining a war, even in fiction, where one side suffers 0 losses.
Totally unrealistic.
Yeah. So when you see some journalists pushing that kind of narrative, a sort of loss-free win for one side, it does make you question the whole story being presented.
Definitely raises flags.
It does. And look, to really drive home this point that losses don't automatically equal defeat, let's just look at some history, some concrete examples.
Good idea.
World War II, massive conflict. The United States, they actually lost more aircraft than they destroyed.
Really?
No.
More. I wouldn't have guessed that.
Significantly more, yeah. The numbers are roughly 65,000 American planes lost versus about 40,000 enemy aircraft destroyed by them.
Wow.
But, I mean, nobody argues America lost World War II, right?
No, of course not. So the key takeaway there is strategic goals, the overall outcome, that outweighs just counting equipment.
Absolutely. That U.S. loss figure is startling if you just look at it in isolation.
So just comparing numbers across different wars is flawed.
Deeply flawed, yes. Because context is everything. The objectives, the overall results. Take Vietnam, for instance.
Okay.
The U.S. lost a lot of aircraft there in a war they ultimately didn't win strategically.
Right.
Then, fast forward to the 1991 Gulf War, the U.S. and allies lost about, 75 aircraft combined?
Yeah.
Fixed-wing helicopters, combat, non-combat losses.
75.
Yeah.
Okay. Still a number, but compared to the scale.
Exactly. And then Kosovo, 1999, NATO lost 2 fighter jets to Serbian air defenses.
And one was that stealth fighter, right?
Yeah.
The F-117.
That's the one, the Nighthawk. Supposedly almost invisible to radar back then. A big deal technologically when it was shot down.
Yeah, that must have been sobering. Even the top tech isn't foolproof. But did it change the war's outcome in Kosovo?
Well, it was a significant event, no doubt. A propaganda win for Serbia, maybe a tactical one.
Mm-hmm.
But strategically, no. It didn't alter NATO's objectives or the final withdrawal of Serbian forces.
Okay.
Then you look at the post-9/11 conflicts, Afghanistan, Iraq. The U.S. Air Force lost over 160 aircraft. accidents, enemy action combined.
Mm.
And tragically, over 100 personnel died in those
Oh,
incidents.
60 aircraft.
Yeah. And even more recently, you see reports from the Middle East, Yemen, for example. Advanced U.S. planes like FA-18 Super Hornets, lots of drones, Predators, Scan Eagles being shot down by Houthi forces.
Right.
The point across all these examples is focusing just on the aircraft tally. It's a distraction from assessing whether the strategic aims were met.
Okay, so let's bring this right back to Operation Sindoor then. If we use the logic that some applied there, that alleged plane losses mean Pakistan won, then applying that same logic, should we say America lost the fight against terror because they lost planes?
Exactly. It highlights the flaw, doesn't it?
It seems completely nonsensical when you put it like that. Especially, again, for you UPSC folks listening, understanding these complex metrics is vital.
Precisely. You can't judge a war by just one number. It's incomplete. Think about the Falklands War, 1982.
Ah, okay. Another good example.
Yeah. The British won, they retook the islands, no question about the strategic victory. But their losses weren't insignificant. They lost 9 aircraft, Harriers mostly,
Bag planes.
and 255 personnel killed. 7 ships sunk or damaged beyond repair.
7 ships.
Yeah, so given those losses,
Yeah.
quite substantial. Would anyone seriously argue Britain lost and Argentina won?
No, that would be absurd. They achieved their objective, retaking the islands.
Unequivocally.
Yeah.
So victory is about achieving the strategic goal, not just about the cost, however painful.
Which really brings us neatly to what some experts say, like Professor Amit Gupta. You mentioned his perspective. What does he add to this?
Well, Professor Gupta really focuses on the information warfare aspect of it all.
The narrative shaping.
Exactly. He points out Pakistan's efforts, sometimes he suggests helped by certain foreign journalists, to really craft a specific story.
Okay.
He gives an example, like that Al Jazeera report, which turned out to be false, about an Indian woman pilot being captured. Gupta suggests the aim might have been to pressure India into a ceasefire.
Interesting tactic. But Gupta also said something about the Indian Air Force not disclosing losses immediately.
Yes, and he actually thinks the IAF was right not to release exact numbers during the campaign itself.
That's interesting, especially when we often talk about transparency, public trust. Why does he think that was the right call?
His argument is basically that it's just unrealistic to expect 0 losses in any real military operation.
Sure, war has costs.
Militaries know this. They plan for casualties, for equipment loss. It's part of waging war. So Gupta's view is the IAF correctly focused on operational security and achieving their mission, rather than getting bogged down in a public tally of losses while things were still active.
Okay, I can see the military logic there. But as you mentioned, our source also notes other experts pushing back, saying transparency is important for public trust, even during conflict.
Yes, there's definitely debate there, a real tension between operational security and democratic accountability.
We saw something similar, didn't we, during the Kargil War back in '99. India lost, I think, 2 aircraft then.
That's right, a MiG-27 and a MiG-21, and a helicopter too, if I recall.
But India achieved a decisive victory over Pakistan in Kargil. The losses didn't negate the overall strategic success.
Precisely. It reinforces the point. There's always a balance to be struck, you know?
Right.
And if we circle back to the heart of Operation Sindoor, what were India's stated objectives, and what did the sources indicate was actually achieved on the ground?
Well, the sources we looked at suggest Indian missiles did hit targets in Pakistan, including major cities and air bases, and there was satellite imagery reportedly backing that up.
Okay. Tangible impact.
And significantly, a major terror center was apparently demolished. There was even a designated terrorist who later admitted family members were casualties in that strike.
That sounds like hitting a specific strategic target related to terrorism.
It does. Plus, you had Prime Minister Modi's statement afterwards, basically saying India would treat terrorists and their patrons the same, implying a shift, a willingness to strike across borders. That itself suggests the strategic objective was met, changing the calculus.
So when you put all that together,
Yeah.
the idea that victory hinges only on counting lost fighter jets looks incredibly shaky. It's a vastly oversimplified, often quite misleading way to measure success. The strategic goals achieved, the impact on the adversary, the bigger geopolitical shifts, those are far more telling indicators. Understanding that nuance, that complexity, is absolutely key for anyone following global security, and especially, as we've said, for our UPSC aspirants.
Absolutely. So for those of you deep in your exam preparation, remember this. Always look for the nuanced picture. Don't get swayed by simple counts or headline-grabbing claims. Metrics in conflict are complex.
Very true.
This deep dive, by the way, drew its insights from articles published in the Eurasian Times, worth checking out if you want to read more.
Good source for these kinds of analyses.
And it leaves us with a thought, doesn't it? Considering these examples, what other common beliefs about warfare, about how victory is measured, might actually deserve a much closer look? Something to ponder.
Good question.
If you found this analysis valuable, please do like and subscribe for more deep dives into critical issues like this. And definitely share your questions or thoughts down in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you.